So here we are beginning to assemble the 1-ton offloader that handles 4 55-gallon barrels of fermented material. To begin the assembly, we take one of the triangular support structures, the end piece, that has a shaft that slips over this main axle. If you look closely at this axle, there's a hole near the end of the axle and a hole on the shaft of the support structure, which aligns the pin that will lock these two pieces so that the axle and the support structure remain intact, assembled. And we're going to start out by first slipping this support structure on one end of the axle. In the midpoint of the axle, there is a sleeve that is positioned precisely in the middle, and the next steps that we'll be following in the assembly process is to go to the opposite end of the axle. After this support structure is in place, we will begin to position each of the offloader individual units for barrels with their sleeves, two on that end and its support structure. Once that's complete, we'll come to this end, take this support structure off and assemble from this side, reassemble and put the pin in place, and then we only have the center beam that's a safety lock for all of the offloader units to bolt on to the last piece. So there are really only 4 points of bolting or securing the assembly together. The rest of it is very well structured to fit precisely individual pieces so that there's no extra movement. It's important though to first start out by stabilizing the axle with a support structure so you can work on the other end. I suggest using a 5-gallon bucket with a lid and a 2x4, which is just about the right height to align things. Makes it easy to work with. If you turn the 2x4 on end, it lifts it a little higher than need be. If the 2x4 is laid flat, it's slightly lower, so there's plenty of room to work here. And because the structure is so heavy, you certainly want to do this carefully and follow these directions, because it would be too much for anyone to handle without some kind of support or safety in a safe manner. So to begin with, we approximate these two pieces. We lift this slightly and you just sort of move this in, and you really don't have to lock it at this point. As long as I have a safe point for this axle to rest on while I'm going to be working at the other end, I'm ready to get started on my assembly process. Now when I do that, I'm going to take the sleeves and the offloader device for the 55-gallon fermenter, and I'm going to put some axle grease on the inside of this sleeve, and the same thing on the sleeve of the offload device for the fermenter, before I slide them onto the axle, and that way I can be sure that they're not going to bind up and they'll move freely once I get them into position. So the next few steps that I'm going to go through will be the axle assembly, and I'll just be moving those on fairly quickly. And that's about all it's going to take to get this machine up and running, which you'll see in a few minutes.